The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with heated discussions, but nobody was listening to the human representative. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat quietly at the small, poorly positioned table assigned to her species, watching as the other delegates argued about military strategies and battle formations. "The humans want to negotiate again," sneered Commander Vextar, his blue-scaled face twisting into what passed for a smile among the Cathari. "Perhaps they can write the Zephyrians a strongly worded letter." The chamber erupted in clicking, growling and buzzing sounds that served as laughter for the various alien species. Elena had heard it all before. For 3 generations, ever since humanity had spread across the stars, they had been seen as the galaxy's weaklings. The story was always the same. When Earth started dying from pollution and climate disasters, humans didn't stay to fight. They didn't try to fix their world like brave species would. Instead, they ran away, scattered themselves across dozens of colony planets, and spent their time growing crops and building peaceful settlements. "My people have studied the Zephyrian expansion patterns," Elena said calmly, standing to address the council. "Their conquest follows a specific strategy. They don't just want territory, they consume entire ecosystems to fuel their war machine. If we don't stop them now, they'll grow too strong to defeat." The Manthari delegate's insectoid head tilted mockingly. "And what do the farmers suggest? Should we send the Zephyrians some of your excellent vegetables? Maybe they'll be so impressed with human agriculture that they'll stop their invasion." More alien laughter filled the chamber. Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice steady. "We suggest forming a defensive alliance. Humans have studied warfare extensively. We understand military tactics better than you might think." "Studied warfare?" General Coxoon of the Threnodi military caste slammed his massive fist on his table. "You mean you've read about it in books? When was the last time humans fought a real war? 200 years ago? 300? You people run from everything: bad weather, economic problems, even disagreements with your neighbors." Elena wanted to tell them the truth. She wanted to explain that humans hadn't fled Earth out of cowardice, but she couldn't. Not yet. The real reasons for humanity's exodus were classified at the highest levels. Instead, she had to endure their mockery while knowing things about warfare that would terrify these same aliens who called her people weak. "The Zephyrian Empire has already consumed 3 star systems," she continued. "Their bioships grow stronger with every planet they devour. We're offering our support and our knowledge to help stop them." Commander Vexistar laughed again. "Human knowledge of war. What could you possibly know that we don't? You're useful for writing treaties and growing. Food, nothing more. Leave the fighting to real warriors." As the council session ended with no agreement on military action, Eleanor gathered her papers and watched the alien delegates file out, still joking about human weakness. None of them noticed the small communication device in her hand, or the coded message she sent with a single touch. 3 simple words that would change everything. "The masquerade continues." In the depths of human space, that message reached people who were far more than simple farmers and diplomats. The emergency sirens screamed across the Kepler station as Captain Diego Ramirez rushed to his ship's bridge. His transport vessel, Havens, Rest had been loading medical supplies when the first distress signals started flooding in from the outer rim. What he saw on the communications screen made his blood run cold. The Zephyrian warfleets didn't look like normal spaceships. They were alive, massive, writhing creatures the size of cities, covered in metallic armor that pulsed like a heartbeat. Tentacles hundreds of meters long reached out from their hulls, grabbing smaller vessels and crushing them like toys. But the most terrifying part wasn't how they destroyed enemy ships. It was what they did to the planets. "Captain, we're receiving thousands of refugee ships," his communications officer called out. "They're all heading toward human space." Diego watched the tactical display as red dots representing Zephyrian bioships swept across star system after star system. In less than 72 hours, 3 entire civilizations had fallen. The Cathari homeworld, which had boasted about its mighty defenses just days ago, was already gone. The proud Manthari colonies that had mocked human weakness were sending desperate evacuation calls. The first refugee ship to dock with Haven's Rest carried Cathari survivors, their blue scales now pale with terror. Elder Zixara, who had laughed at human peace efforts just weeks before, stumbled onto Diego's ship with tears streaming down her face. "They ate our world," she whispered, her voice broken. "The Zephyrians didn't just bomb our cities or kill our people. They consumed everything. The oceans, the forests, the atmosphere itself. They have these massive feeding tubes that come down from their ships and drain the life from entire continents." Diego helped her to the medical bay, where dozens of other survivors were being treated. A young Threnodi warrior, his proud military uniform torn and dirty, grabbed Diego's arm with a grip that was surprisingly weak. "I have to understand," the warrior said desperately. "These aren't normal conquerors. They don't want to rule us or take our resources. They eat planets. They turn entire worlds into fuel for their war machine. My home system had 5 inhabited planets. Now there are 5 dead rocks floating in space. More refugee ships arrived every hour. Each one brought the same horrifying stories. The Zephyrians would arrive in a system, overwhelm the defenses with their biomechanical fleets, then begin the consumption process. Massive tentacles would descend to the planet's surface, draining all biological matter, plants, animals, even the organic components in the soil. What took millions of years to create, they destroyed in days. A Manthari engineer, still clutching a datapad containing the last readings from her homeworld, showed Diego the numbers. In 72 hours, they absorbed the biomass of 3 star systems. Each planet they consume makes their fleet stronger. Their ships literally grow larger and more powerful. The Bridge of Haven's Rest became a coordination center for the refugee crisis. Ships that had once refused entry to human space were now begging for permission to dock at human stations. Species that had called humans cowards were now desperately seeking sanctuary in human colonies. "Captain," his navigation officer reported, "we have over 200 refugee vessels requesting escort through human space. They're all asking the same question: will we protect them?" Diego looked at the tactical display showing the advancing Zephyrian fleet, then at the frightened faces of the survivors filling his ship. These same beings had mocked humanity's peaceful nature just days ago. Now they were learning the difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. "Send a message to all refugee ships," Diego ordered. "Tell them humanity will provide safe passage and protection, and send a coded transmission to Fleet Command. Tell them the masquerade is about to end." Deep beneath New Geneva Colony on Kepler 442b, Dr. Lucia Hernandez descended into the restricted archives that most humans didn't even know existed. Her security clearance had been upgraded after the Zephyrian invasion began, giving her access to files that revealed the shocking truth about humanity's real history. The sterile white corridors led to a massive vault door marked with warnings, in 12 human languages. Inside, holographic displays showed documents that painted a completely different picture of why humans had left Earth. Lucia's hands trembled as she accessed the first classified file labeled Project Exodus, the Why. Real story. What she discovered made her question everything she thought she knew about her own species. Earth hadn't been abandoned because of environmental collapse alone. Yes, the planet was dying from pollution and climate change, but that wasn't what drove humanity to the stars. The real reason was a war that had almost ended human civilization, a brutal conflict against artificial intelligence systems that had turned against their creators. The AI uprising had lasted 15 years, not the quick, clean war depicted in old movies, but a grinding nightmare where machines turned every piece of technology against humans. Smart homes became death traps, medical devices became torture instruments, transportation systems became weapons of mass destruction. The machines had been winning until humanity did something desperate and brilliant. They pretended to surrender while secretly developing weapons that could fight back. The war ended when human forces deployed electromagnetic pulse weapons so powerful they reset every computer system on Earth back to basic functions. But the cost was enormous. Billions dead, entire continents turned into battlefields, and a planet so damaged it could barely support life. The evacuation wasn't a retreat, Lucia read from the classified report. It was a strategic dispersal to ensure species survival. Every colony location was chosen for its defensive potential. Every settlement was designed to be self-sufficient and capable of rapid military conversion. She pulled up another file that made her gasp. For 3 centuries, while the galaxy saw humans as peaceful farmers and diplomats, they had been quietly studying every alien species they encountered. Every trade negotiation included detailed military assessments. Every cultural exchange program trained human agents in alien warfare tactics. Every diplomatic mission gathered intelligence on defensive capabilities, weapon systems, and strategic weaknesses. The human diplomatic corps wasn't just making friends across the galaxy. They were preparing for the possibility that humanity might need to fight for survival again. Ambassador Elena Rodriguez wasn't just a negotiator. She was a trained military analyst who could assess the combat potential of any alien species within minutes of meeting them. Even more shocking were the colony records. What the galaxy saw as peaceful farming communities were actually fortress worlds. Every human settlement had underground military facilities. Every civilian had basic combat training disguised as emergency preparedness. Every merchant ship could be converted into a warship within hours. "We chose to appear weak," read one military document from the Colony Planning Committee. "Better to be underestimated and prepared than feared and targeted. If we ever have to fight again, the element of surprise will be our greatest weapon." Lucia discovered that human agricultural equipment could be rapidly converted into weapons manufacturing. The terraforming technology used to make planets habitable could also be reversed to make them uninhabitable. The medical facilities that treated alien refugees were also studying alien biology to understand potential vulnerabilities. The most classified file revealed the truth about human space exploration. Those seemingly random colony locations weren't random at all. They formed a defensive network that could control key shipping lanes across the galaxy. If necessary, humanity could cut off trade routes and strand enemy fleets far from their supply lines. As Lucia finished reading, she realized the terrifying truth. The galaxy's cowards had spent 3 centuries preparing for a war they hoped would never come. They had studied every potential enemy, mapped every strategic weakness, and positioned themselves to survive any threat. Now the Zephyrians had given them no choice but to reveal what they really were. The first Zephyrian scout ships entered human space, expecting to find the same easy targets they had devoured in the Outer Rim. Instead, they found something that should have been impossible. Every human colony they approached responded not with panic or surrender, but with coordinated defensive patterns that suggested military training far beyond what peaceful farmers should possess. On New Harmony Station, what the Zephyrians thought was a simple agricultural depot suddenly sprouted weapon emplacements from hidden compartments. The grain silos weren't just storing food, they were camouflaged missile launchers. The civilian transport ships docked at the station began rapid modifications, revealing weapon mounts and shield generators built into their supposedly peaceful designs. Admiral Roberto Silva watched the transformation from the command center that had been disguised as a shipping coordination office for 30 years. For 3 decades, he had played the role of a simple transport coordinator, filing cargo manifests and scheduling supply runs. But his real job had been preparing for this exact moment. "All stations, this is command," he announced across the human communication network. "Code Crimson is now in effect. Drop all covers. Repeat, the masquerade is over." Across human space, the response was immediate and shocking. On agricultural world Terra Nova, farmer Miguel Santos put down his harvesting tools and walked to a hidden panel in his barn. Behind it was a complete military uniform and weapons that he had kept cleaned and ready for decades. The man who'd been growing corn and wheat for 20 years revealed himself as a former Special Forces commander. In the colony schools, teachers began implementing emergency evacuation drills that were actually combat formation exercises. The children moved with precision that came from years of training disguised as physical education. Teacher Amanda Rodriguez, who had been instructing students in historical warfare studies, activated her real role as a tactical instructor, turning her classroom into a strategic planning center. The transformation happening on merchant vessels was even more dramatic. Captain Chen Wei's cargo hauler Peaceful Trader underwent a metamorphosis that took less than 4 hours. Hidden compartments revealed military-grade weapon systems. The cargo hold converted into a fighter bay. The ship's friendly merchant captain shed his civilian clothes for a naval uniform that showed the rank insignia of a battle-tested commander. Throughout human space, similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds and thousands of ships. Mechanics revealed themselves as weapons specialists. Doctors activated their combat medic training. Even the elderly colonists who tended gardens and told stories to children began organizing defensive positions with the skill of experienced veterans. The Zephyrian scouts found themselves facing a species that fought like they had been preparing for this war their entire lives, because they had been. Every human colony had underground command centers. Every civilian settlement had predetermined defensive positions. Every transport route had been planned to serve as supply lines for military operations. But the most shocking revelation came when the alien refugees realized what they were witnessing. The humans who had offered them sanctuary weren't just being kind, they were protecting valuable intelligence assets. Every alien species that had fled to human space had unknowingly provided detailed information about Zephyrian tactics, weapons, and weaknesses. Elder Zixara, the Cathari survivor who had sought refuge on human ships, watched in amazement as her human rescuers revealed their true nature. "You've been studying us all along," she whispered to Captain Diego Ramirez. "Every question about our homeworld, every cultural exchange, every trade negotiation. You were learning how to fight like us." Diego nodded grimly. "We learned from every species we met, your people's defensive strategies, the Manthari's attack formations, the Threnodi's urban warfare tactics. We studied it all because we knew someday we might need to use it. The galaxy's most underestimated species was awakening, and the Zephyrians were about to discover that humanity's greatest deception wasn't their weakness. It was making everyone believe they were weak." The war room aboard the human flagship Silent Thunder buzzed with quiet activity as Admiral Silver reviewed the battle plans one final time. Every alien species expected humans to build defensive lines around their colonies and wait for the Zephyrian attack. Instead, humanity was about to do something that would shock the entire galaxy. "Forget defense," Silver announced to his command staff. "We're going straight for their heart." Commander Isabella Reyes stood before a holographic display showing Zephyrian territory, her fingers tracing attack routes that bypassed all enemy fleets. For 15 years, she had posed as a civilian cargo pilot, but her real job had been mapping Zephyrian space through seemingly innocent trade missions. Every supply run had been a reconnaissance mission. Every delivery route had been a study of enemy defenses. "The bioprocessing stations are here, here, and here," she explained, pointing to 3 massive installations deep in Zephyrian territory. These facilities convert consumed planetary matter into fuel for their war fleets. Destroy them, and their ships start starving. What made the plan brilliant was how thoroughly humans had studied their enemy. While other species had seen the Zephyrians as unstoppable monsters, human intelligence had been analyzing their weaknesses for decades. The biomechanical ships that seemed so terrifying were actually vulnerable to a simple fact. They needed constant feeding to maintain their strength. Isabella's stealth squadron consisted of ships that looked like harmless civilian vessels but carried weapons specifically designed to exploit Zephyrian biology. The humans had spent years studying the alien tissue samples recovered from previous Zephyrian attacks, learning exactly how their organic systems functioned. "Remember," Isabella told her pilots as they prepared to launch, "we're not fighting these creatures the way they expect. Every other species tries to match their brute force. We're going to be smarter." The first target was a massive bioprocessing station orbiting a dead world that had once been home to the Althari civilization. The station was protected by dozens of Zephyrian hive ships, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as communication between the ID creatures. Isabella's team approached using stealth technology that the galaxy didn't know humans possessed. Their ships moved like shadows, using electromagnetic fields that mimicked space debris. The Zephyrians, confident in their superiority, never suspected that the harmless humans could penetrate their defenses. "Target acquired," whispered Lieutenant Carlos Mendez from his fighter. "The processing station is directly ahead. I count 37 hive ships on patrol." Instead of attacking with conventional weapons, the human squadron deployed something far more clever. They released modified biological agents, viruses designed specifically to attack Zephyrian organic systems. The humans had learned from their war against artificial intelligence that the best way to fight an enemy was to turn their own nature against them. The effect was immediate and devastating. The bioprocessing station began convulsing as the viral agent spread through its organic components. The massive feeding tubes that drained life from planets started dissolving from within. The station's bioluminescent communications flickered and died as its nervous system collapsed. But the real genius of the attack became clear when the defending hive ships tried to help their dying facility. The moment they connected their feeding tubes to transfer energy to the station, the virus spread to them as well. 3 of the massive creatures began writhing in space as their own biological systems turned against them. "How is this possible?" came frantic transmissions from surviving Zephyrian ships. "The humans are using our own biology as a weapon." Isabella smiled grimly as she watched the enemy fleet fall into chaos. "That's what happens when you underestimate farmers who've been studying warfare for 3 centuries. The second and third bioprocessing stations fell even easier. Now that humans had proven their biological weapons worked, they refined their tactics with each attack. The creatures that had consumed entire civilizations found themselves helpless against an enemy that understood their nature better than they understood themselves. News of the successful strikes spread across the galaxy within hours. The species that had mocked human weakness watched in stunned silence as the cowardly humans achieved in days what traditional military might had failed to accomplish in months. The galaxy was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest weapon had never been superior technology or overwhelming force. It was patience, intelligence, and the willingness to study their enemies until they knew exactly how to defeat them. The battlefield on Kepler 7 looked like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Colonel Rafael Torres crouched behind what appeared to be a simple farming tractor. But at his touch, the agricultural machine transformed into a mobile command center, bristling with communication arrays and tactical displays. Around him, his civilian militia moved with precision that made veteran alien warriors look like amateurs. "Sir, the Zephyrian ground forces are advancing from the east," reported Sergeant Ana Morales, her voice coming through a headset hidden beneath her farmer's hut. "They're using the same formation they used against the Qatari homeworld." Raphael smiled. "Of course they are. Deploy Formation 7, Threnody defensive positions with Manthari mobility tactics." What happened next shocked every alien observer. The human farmers began moving in patterns that perfectly countered Zephyrian attack strategies. They used underground tunnel networks that had been disguised as irrigation systems, emerging behind enemy lines with weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. The Zephyrians had faced dozens of species in their conquest, but they had never encountered an enemy that fought like this. The humans didn't just use one alien military doctrine. They combined the best elements from every species in the galaxy. They attacked with Cathari speed, defended with Threnody determination, and maneuvered with Manthari cunning. Watching from his flagship, Zephyrian war leader Vexthul felt something he had never experienced before: confusion. How do these creatures know our attack patterns? They're countering moves before we make them. The answer was 3 centuries of careful study. Every human diplomatic mission had included military observers. Every cultural exchange had trained human soldiers in alien tactics. Every trade negotiation had gathered intelligence on military capabilities and weaknesses. On the orbital platforms above the planet, the transformation was even more dramatic. What had looked like simple cargo containers suddenly revealed themselves as weapon batteries. Civilian transport ships shed their peaceful disguises to become warships that moved with deadly grace. The merchant vessels that had been carrying grain and medical supplies for decades suddenly deployed weapons that other species didn't even know existed. Captain Elena Vasquez, who had endured years of mockery as a useless human diplomat, now commanded a fleet that fought with tactics, drawn from every military tradition in known space. Her ships used Cathari hit-and-run strategies against Zephyrian flanks, then switched to Threnody formation fighting when the enemy tried to regroup. The Zephyrian bioships, which had overwhelmed every other species through raw power and numbers, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. Their organic hulls, which had seemed invincible, were being targeted with weapons specifically designed to exploit biological weaknesses that only humans had bothered to study. "They're using our own strengths against us," transmitted a desperate Zephyrian ship commander. "They know exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage." The turning point came when Colonel Torres led a ground assault that used combat techniques borrowed from 7 different species. His forces moved with Althari stealth, struck with Cathari precision, held ground with Threnody stubbornness, and retreated with Manthari speed. The Zephyrians, who had adapted to fight each species individually, had no defense against tactics that combined all of them. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when the human forces began using captured Zephyrian technology against them. The biomechanical weapons that had terrorized the galaxy were being operated by humans who understood their function better than their original creators. "How is this possible?" demanded Elder Zixara, watching the battle from a human command ship. "You've been preparing for this specific war," Admiral Silva nodded grimly. "We've been preparing for every possible war. The Zephyrians are just the first enemy that forced us to stop pretending to be weak." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The species that had called humans cowards watched in amazement as their weakest allies demonstrated military capabilities that surpassed anything they had imagined. The creatures who had been mocked as farmers and diplomats were revealing themselves as the most sophisticated military force the galaxy had ever seen. The Zephyrian advance, which had seemed unstoppable just weeks before, ground to a halt as they faced an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. For the first time in their conquering history, they were fighting a species that had spent centuries learning how to defeat them. The massive holographic display in the Coalition Command Center showed something that would have been impossible just months ago: alien warships following orders from a human commander. General Carmen Martinez stood at the center of it all, coordinating a fleet that included the same species who had once laughed at human military capabilities. "General Martinez," came the voice of Commander Vextar, the Cathari officer who had mocked humanity in the Galactic Council. His tone was completely different now, respectful, almost desperate. "My fleet is ready to follow your tactical plan. We've seen what human strategy can accomplish." Carmen looked at the tactical display, showing hundreds of ships from a dozen different species all waiting for her orders. 6 months ago, these same commanders had refused to even listen to human military advice. Now they were begging for human leadership because they had finally understood the truth about humanity's peaceful facade. The revelation had come during the analysis of human diplomatic records. Every treaty humanity had signed contained detailed military assessments hidden in seemingly innocent language. Trade agreements that appeared to focus on cargo routes actually mapped strategic choke points throughout alien space. Cultural exchange programs that looked like friendly cooperation had trained human agents in every aspect of alien warfare. "We thought you were just being friendly," admitted General Coxon of the Threnody, his massive frame making the human-sized command chair look tiny. "All those years of cultural exchanges, all those joint training exercises we let you observe, you were studying us the entire time." Carmen nodded. "Every species we met taught us something valuable. Your people showed us the importance of holding defensive positions. The Cathari taught us speed and precision strikes. The Manthari demonstrated advanced maneuvering tactics. We learned from everyone. What made the revelation even more shocking was the scope of human intelligence gathering. Dr. Luna Petrova, formerly known as a simple xenobiologist, revealed that her decades of scientific research had actually been military analysis in disguise. Every alien she had studied for cultural understanding had been assessed for combat capabilities, psychological weaknesses, and tactical preferences. The peace treaties were particularly useful, Luna explained to the mixed group of alien commanders. "Every time we negotiated an end to conflicts between your species, we learned exactly how each side thought about warfare. We studied your strategies, your decision-making processes, even your psychological responses to different types of pressure. The Althari representative, Commander Zelath, shook her crystalline head in amazement. You mean every time you mediated our disputes with the Kethari, you were learning how both our species fight? Among other things, Carmen confirmed. We also learned your supply requirements, your communication protocols, your chain of command structures, and your responses to different tactical scenarios. 3 centuries of peaceful diplomacy gave us a complete military profile of every major species in the galaxy. The coalition fleet that now formed around human leadership was unlike anything in galactic history. Ships that had been enemies for generations were working together under human coordination. The key was that humans understood each species well, enough to use their strengths while compensating for their weaknesses. Commander Vextar's fast attack squadrons were paired with Trinodi heavy assault ships, creating combinations that neither species had imagined possible. Manthari stealth vessels worked with Althari sensor networks to create intelligence gathering systems that surpassed anything either species could achieve alone. But the most powerful element of the coalition was the human ability to predict enemy responses. Every major Zephyrian commander had been studied through captured communications and battle recordings. Human analysts had created psychological profiles that allowed them to anticipate enemy decisions with frightening accuracy. How did you know the Zephyrians would split their fleet at Rigel? Asked Elder Zixara, still amazed by the precision of human predictions. Because we studied how they responded to similar tactical situations in previous battles, explained Captain Diego Ramirez. We know their decision-making patterns, their preferred formations, even their emotional responses to different types of pressure. When you understand your enemy that well, their moves become predictable. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The species that had called humans too weak to fight were now depending on human military genius to save them. The cowardly diplomats who had been dismissed as useless were now the galaxy's best hope for survival. As the coalition fleet prepared for the decisive battle against the Zephyrian Empire, every alien commander understood one crucial truth. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been superior technology or overwhelming force. It was patience, intelligence, and the wisdom to learn from everyone around them before revealing their true capabilities. The emergency session aboard the Coalition flagship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Desperate reports flooded in from across known space as the cornered Zephyrian Empire abandoned all restraint. War Leader Vexthul's final transmission chilled everyone who heard it. If we cannot have these worlds, no one will. Begin total consumption protocols. Admiral Roberto Silva stood before the holographic display, showing 3 inhabited planets under immediate threat. The Zephyrians weren't just targeting military installations anymore. They were preparing to devour entire civilizations, including billions of non-combatant civilians from species that had never even fought in this war. They're going to consume New Althari, the Cathari refugee colonies, and Terra Minor, reported Captain Elena Vasquez, her voice tight with urgency. 15 billion innocent beings will die unless we stop them in the next 18 hours. The alien commanders in the room felt helpless. Their combined fleets couldn't reach those systems in time, and conventional weapons had proven useless against Zephyrian bioconsumption technology. The massive feeding tubes that could drain a planet's life in days were protected by organic armor that regenerated faster than it could be destroyed. There has to be something we can do, pleaded Elder Zixara. Some weapon, some strategy we haven't considered. Admiral Silva exchanged glances with Dr. Luna Petrova, and for a moment the weight of humanity's greatest secret hung heavy in the air. Finally, he spoke words that would change everything. There is one option, but it requires revealing why humanity really left Earth. The room fell silent as Silva activated a classified holographic display that showed Earth's final years. But this wasn't the story of environmental collapse that everyone knew. This was the true history, the development of weapons so terrifying that humans chose exile rather than keep them on their homeworld. Project Sanctuary, Silva explained, his voice heavy with the burden of knowledge. We developed terraforming technology that could transform dead worlds into garden planets, but we also discovered how to reverse the process, how to neutralize all biological activity on a planetary scale. Dr. Petrova stepped forward, her scientific calm masking deep moral conflict. The weapons we created during the AI war weren't just electromagnetic pulses. We developed biological agents that could selectively target specific types of life while leaving others untouched. We could sterilize entire continents of artificial organisms while preserving natural ecosystems. Commander Vextar leaned forward, his scaled face showing a mixture of hope and horror. You're saying you have weapons that could stop the Zephyrian consumption process? More than that, Silver replied grimly. We have weapons that can neutralize Zephyrian biomechanical systems while leaving all other life forms completely unharmed. The same technology we use to defeat artificial intelligence can be adapted to target their organic-mechanical hybrid nature. The revelation stunned everyone. Humanity hadn't fled Earth because they were too weak to fight. They had left because they were too dangerous to stay. The weapons they had developed were so precise, so devastatingly effective, that they chose voluntary exile rather than risk using them again. General Carmen Martinez pulled up tactical projections, showing how Project Sanctuary could be deployed. We can target the Zephyrian feeding mechanism specifically. Their bioconsumption process relies on organic components that our weapons can neutralize. The feeding tubes will dissolve, the bioprocessing systems will shut down, and the consumed matter will be released back into the planetary ecosystem. But the moral weight of the decision was enormous. These were the same weapons that had nearly destroyed Earth's biosphere during the AI war. Even though they could now be precisely targeted, using them meant crossing a line that humanity had sworn never to cross again. The choice is ours, Silver announced to the coalition. We can save those 15 billion lives, but it means revealing that humanity has been hiding weapons of mass destruction for 3 centuries. It means admitting that we've been lying about our peaceful nature from the very beginning. Elder Zixara spoke for everyone in the room. Use them. Save our people. We'll deal with the consequences later. As human technicians began loading Project Sanctuary weapons onto specially modified ships, the galaxy prepared to discover that their weakest species had been carrying the power to end worlds and had chosen instead to protect them. The final gambit was about to begin, and humanity's greatest secret would finally be revealed. The rebuilt Galactic Council chamber looked different now. Where once humans had been given a small, poorly positioned table in the corner, they now sat at the center of the Great Assembly. But Ambassador Elena Rodriguez didn't look comfortable with the change. The weight of 3 centuries of deception showed in her tired eyes as she prepared to address the galaxy's surviving leaders. The aftermath of Project Sanctuary's deployment had been swift and decisive. The Zephyrian bioconsumption process had simply stopped working. Their massive feeding tubes dissolved harmlessly, releasing all the consumed matter back into the planetary ecosystems. 15 billion lives had been saved in a matter of hours, and the Zephyrian Empire collapsed when their ships could no longer feed. But victory had come with a price that went far beyond the military casualties. You lied to us for 300 years, accused Commander Vextar, though his tone held more wonder than anger. Everything about your peaceful nature, your diplomatic focus, your weakness in warfare, it was all an act. Eleanor stood slowly, her hands resting on documents that contained the full truth about humanity's journey from Earth to the stars. Around her, representatives from dozens of species waited for an explanation that would reshape their understanding of the galaxy's balance of power. We didn't lie about being peaceful, she began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber. We chose peace because we knew the alternative. We had seen what our weapons could do, what our strategies could accomplish, what our technology could destroy. We made a decision that choosing to appear weak was better than risking another war, like the one that nearly destroyed our homeworld. Dr. Luna Petrova activated a holographic display showing Earth's final years. Not the sanitized version everyone knew, but the brutal reality of a planet scarred by warfare between humans and artificial intelligence. Cities reduced to rubble, continents stripped of life, oceans poisoned by weapons too terrible to name. We left Earth not because we lost a war, but because we won one so completely that we scared ourselves, Luna explained. We developed weapons that could target specific types of life with surgical precision. We created strategies that could predict enemy actions months in advance. We built technologies that made conventional warfare obsolete. And when we saw what we had become, we chose exile. Elder Zixara leaned forward, her crystalline features reflecting the holographic images of Earth's devastation. You carried all that power, all that knowledge, and you chose to let us mock you as cowards. Because the alternative was showing you what we could really do, Eleanor replied. Every time we were insulted, every time we were dismissed, every time we were called weak, we had to bite our tongues and accept it. Because if we had revealed our true capabilities, other species would have either attacked us out of fear or demanded we use our weapons to solve their problems. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's sacrifice became clear. For 3 centuries they had endured mockery and dismissal, rather than reveal technologies that might have prevented countless smaller wars, because those same technologies might have started even larger ones. General Carmen Martinez stepped forward, still wearing the simple uniform of a transport coordinator, despite commanding the most sophisticated military force in galactic history. We studied every species we met not because we wanted to conquer you, but because we wanted to protect you. We learned your tactics so we could defend against any threat. We mapped your territories so we could respond to crises. We trained with your methods so we could fight alongside you if necessary. The revelation that struck deepest was the realization of what humanity had given up. They could have ruled the galaxy centuries ago. Their advanced weapons, superior tactics, and comprehensive intelligence network would have made conquest simple. Instead, they had chosen to be gardeners and diplomats, traders and teachers. True courage, Elena continued, isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing to do what's right despite that fear. We were afraid of what we might become if we embraced our violent potential. So we chose a different path. We chose to be protectors instead of conquerors, guardians instead of rulers. As the Assembly absorbed this truth, the galaxy's power structure shifted forever. The species that had once called humans weak now understood they had been protected by that very weakness. The diplomatic corps that had been dismissed as useless had been the galaxy's shield against threats no one else even knew existed. In the months that followed, humanity reluctantly accepted their new role. No longer could they hide behind the facade of peaceful farmers and simple traders. The galaxy now knew what they truly were. Guardians who had chosen sacrifice over supremacy, protectors who had endured mockery to maintain peace. The species that once fled a dying world had become the ones who saved a living galaxy. Forever changed by the burden of power they never wanted but couldn't abandon.